A South Jersey man accused of harassing his Black neighbors was arrested. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside of 45-year-old Edward Cagney Matthews' home in Mount Laurel after a video of his racist rant against his neighbor went viral on Monday.
Outside of this man's home, this crowd has grown exponentially, especially as more people have watched this already viral video. Now, things have been peaceful, but there have been a few tense moments. Tensions and tempers flared Monday on Gramercy Way in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. The anger and outrage centered on this.
Back up. Keep backing up. Back up. Keep backing up. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
An explosive interaction between neighbors caught on video back on July 2nd and is now part of a police investigation.
Walk away. It's not Africa. Oh, this is Africa. It's not Solomon or wherever you were. I was born in America. Well, then you know what common ground. What's common ground? I don't give a shit about you.
According to police, the man in the video in the green shirt is 45-year-old Edward Cagney Matthews.
This over here, this over here, both have videotape of you putting your hands on me.
Matthews now faces harassment and bias intimidation charges connected to the dispute that, according to neighbors, stem from months of issues with the development's HOA board, including this racial slur written on a board member's fence and years of allegations of harassment of others.
Joining us to discuss this is contributors Rachel D. Graham and Sadiyah Karriem. Greetings, sisters.
Thank you. Good evening. How are you?
All right. Sister Rachel, I want to ask you first, and then we'll move over to Sister Sadiyah for your thoughts. We would like to begin this segment by simply asking each of you to share your thoughts about this incident.
If mess around and find out could be terrifying, this would be it. And so the irony in all of this is I actually grew up not too far from Mount Laurel, New Jersey and South Jersey. And so this kind of hit home because, you know, I can kind of feel how the folks in the neighborhood felt. It is I'm going to say a bedroom community of sorts where you have a lot of folks who found solace in the suburbs of South Jersey, moving from Philadelphia into South Jersey. And so that's the level of Black folks you have. And you really need to understand that as folks from Philly, my family was from West Philly and we made our way into South Jersey. That's just not something we're going to tolerate. And so my understanding is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is not the first incident with this gentleman. I use that term loosely. And so I am not surprised that the response that he received was what he got. He asked for it, he got it. And so, yeah, that's my initial response.
Your thoughts?
So the reality is it wasn't until this video went viral until the people or the community of the neighbors got some type of justice. I was looking in the history of this particular man. And since 2017, he's literally been harassing the neighborhood. He started off with the HOA, the board, and on it was 3 Black members. One of the members had to sell her home because of the amount of harassment that this particular man forced upon her. But the fault was the police department, because there were many complaints that were filed with the police department to investigate this man before it escalated the way that it did, and they did nothing. There was a sister who there were additional charges, I believe, yesterday or today that were filed against him. Harassment, stalking. They found weapons in his home where he was shooting BB guns at the neighbors' vehicles. They found drugs in his home. I mean, just overall, he was a bad neighbor, but he was a terrorist in that particular neighborhood. So I'm glad that the neighborhood got some justice by keeping this man out for a period of time. Right now, he's currently in jail, and they're asking for him to stay until this case is resolved and for him not to come back. But everywhere he goes, he leaves this type of terrorist behavior behind him, terroristic behavior behind him. So I'm glad that the people in that particular neighborhood were able to defend themselves against him. But it took way too long for the police to take this very seriously.
Right. And as you mentioned, since the emergence of this recent racist rant, others have come forward with reports. As you mentioned, it was another report that has been filed today. Yet nothing was done up until now. Why do you think he's been able to commit these acts and not get arrested until now?
It's white privilege. It's what it is. You're dealing with white privilege. You're dealing with police officers in that particular town who know who sympathized with him. And until this went viral and the whole world started watching him, they knew they had to do something.
I would also offer to piggyback on what Sister Sadiyah said. I'm all about quotes. Will Smith is quoted as saying, it's not that racism, I'm paraphrasing, it's not that racism has gotten worse, it's just gotten videotaped. And so he did it to himself. And that's the level of white privilege and hubris that there is that he felt as though he could go on camera, Facebook Live or whatever he used, and said, come see me. And I don't know that he, I've seen somewhere that he has now said that, oh, I'm sorry, I was drunk. The other thing I wanted to raise up in my research on this is that one of the neighbors said that there's very little recourse that is available to folks to address this. There is something stipulated that any terroristic threat that's made against a board member of the HOA is supposed to be met with some type of legal action. I second Sister Sadiyah's point on this, that it took too long for it to get to this. And my understanding is that he's only going to be subjected to a $500 fine as it relates to what's on statute. So it should be interesting to see what happened. But in answer to your question, yeah, it until there's videotaped evidence, it's as if it does not matter or does not happen.
Seeing more and more responses by the Black community who are showing up at the homes of these racists to express their rage. There have been some violent acts that have taken place as it relates to the breaking of windows, hurling of bottles, and other things at these racist men. Are we seeing Black people reach a point where they're finally becoming tired of just passively protesting and now want to interact directly and confront these racists? Sister Sadiyah, I'll start with you.
Oh, we've been tired. We've been tired of these Kens and these Karens and this overt racism or terroristic acts that have been inflicted upon us. And so now with social media, we have to have some physical or video evidence to prove that this is happening in order for us to get some semblance of justice. And now, the powers that be, the sheriff's department, the prosecutor, they want to try to have some fake moral consciousness because it's gone viral. But the reality is, we talk about social media, but it's an excellent tool in order for us to get the revolution will be televised. So that's what we're really looking at.
Right. Sister Rachel, your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Sister Sadiyah. I think we've been tired. I believe that we have been tired, but I do believe that we're at a tipping point. And it's kind of an extension of what we experienced last summer with the murder, unfortunately, of Brother George Floyd. My concern is, what's the reaction going to be to us being tired, and where does that leave us? And I get concerned, honestly, that we do still have police officers with hair finger triggers. They shoot first and claim that it was self-defense later. And so looking at what that's going to look like as we get more and more tired, and hopefully lawmakers and the quote unquote powers that be will recognize that frustration and tiredness and do something about the issues that we have consistently over the last several hundred years, dating back to Nat Turner and all the way forward, have been saying this is not fair, this is not right. Yeah.
Now, one question that we normally don't hear is solution-based. And I want to know from you, we'll start with you, Sister Rachel, what should we as a community learn from this incident?
That there's power in numbers, that social media does have its uses, that viral works, that there are protections in place for you to utilize these little devices that we have to capture, like Sister Sadiyah said, the revolution is about to be televised, and to leverage that and to understand that I always use this phrase like the mother from Soul Food said, all together we can strike a mighty blow. Separately, we are not able to do these things. But if we come together and stand together and say, no, not one more, I think there is strength in those numbers, and we should not be afraid to utilize it.
Sadiyah, your thoughts on that? What do you think that we should learn as a community from this incident and incidents like these?
So the reality is the police was called by one of the neighbor. He was an African-American man, but it was a white woman. So it wasn't until she called the police until there was some semblance of justice. So I say this, that as Black people, we have to police our own neighborhoods, and we cannot allow a terrorist to come in our neighborhoods and terrorize us, waiting and hoping that the police will give us some justice. I'm not talking about violence. But I'm making sure that these people can't come into our neighborhoods and continue to harass us or to diminish our community and our quality of life.
Thank you. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Then we'll return to discuss the recent tweet of Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush stating that Black people still aren't free. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is being called racist after Sunday evening, tweeting that Black people still aren't free amid July 4th celebrations.
Bush under fire for a 4th of July tweet calling the U.S. stolen land where Black Americans are still not free. That got some attention. Let me just read the tweets that are getting the attention, all right? Cori Bush said, when they say that the 4th of July is about American freedom, remember this. The freedom they're referring to is for white people. This land is stolen land and Black people still aren't free. She's a congresswoman from St. Louis, Missouri. Maxine Waters, California. July 4th, and so the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal. Equal to what? What men? Only white men? Isn't it something that they wrote this in 1776 when African Americans were enslaved? They weren't thinking about us then, but we're thinking about us now. End tweet.
We are back with our contributors, Rachel D. Graham and Sadiyah Karriem. Greetings. All right. Sister Sadiyah, we'll start with you since we started with Sister Rachel on the last segment. Regarding this tweet, was the Congresswoman being racist when she made this statement?
Absolutely not. She was not being racist. What she was actually doing was telling the truth. Anytime you tell the truth about that white supremacist establishment, they want to turn it around because they feel some kind of way or they don't want the distraction. And they call it racism. Because if we look at the reality of July 4th was never about Black people being free. The truth and reality was the independence of America was embraced because of keeping slaves enslaved. You know, they were freeing themselves from the British, from Britain, because Britain didn't want to have slavery anymore. White America, the white colonies, they wanted to fight to be able to continue to keep their slaves. So when we look at the Constitution, we were never included in that Constitution. Actually, we were considered nothing but property in 3/5 of an individual based on voting rights. So she wasn't lying when she said that. And I applaud her, Congresswoman Waters and Congresswoman Bush, on being able to tell the truth to power. So now that we got to deal with this issue.
Right. Now, there are a number of Black politicians on the state and federal level. There are also numerous Blacks who are accomplishing a lot economically here in America. America, after having its first Black president, now has its first Black vice president. With that being said, Rachel, is the questioning of her assertion that Blacks are still not free justifiable?
Absolutely. And the best way to actually look at that is, let's look at the imbalances as it relates to incarceration of African Americans as opposed to other members of the population. Let's look at the health outcomes of African Americans in this country. Let's look at home ownership rates in this country. Let's look at all these various things that are legislated and controlled by law. You have laws that are written to actually keep us behind. And so, no, she was not racist. The definition of a racist makes it impossible for an African American to be racist. We do not benefit from the system of racism, which is a social construct. So no, she was not racist. And yes, we've made all these advancements, but at the end of the day, all you have to do is look at all these various social ills and outcomes to know that, yes, Black folks are still trying to get free, period.
Backlash over her tweet. The Congresswoman also fired back with several other tweets defending her initial ones. Do you think that Black politicians who are not afraid to speak up will have a long tenure in this political system? This is Rachel. Go ahead.
If we as Black people continue to vote our people into office and address those issues, Sister Rachel said it head on about the prison industrial complex. We had slavery, and then the 13th Amendment was added to the Constitution, ratified, where those who went into prison were not free. And so then you had the convict leasing program, the Black codes, the Jim Crow laws. Then we had the war on drugs, the fake war on drugs, where they infiltrated our neighborhoods and our communities with drugs to put us back so that they could have free labor. So we have a modern day, which we call the prison industrial complex, a modern day system of slavery that is pushing the Black woman and the Black man and minorities into the prison. For economic reasons.
Right. Sister Rachel, any thoughts on that? Do you think that her Congresswoman Bush's statements, or any other Congress person who is not afraid to stand up, do you think that'll affect their career?
That's a two-part answer. So again, I go back to the fact that as long as we stand together and have the backs of those who are not afraid to stand up and tell the truth, they're going to be okay. It's interesting, whenever folks look at voting and look at elections and project out the outcomes of elections, they always base it upon a portion of the voting public. They always look at chronic voters, which only represents 35%. In most cases, 35 to 60% on a good day in a presidential election. They never take a look at the least, the lost, and the left out who decide not to vote. And those are the folks that will keep you in office. And if you keep speaking to the issues that they experience, then absolutely, I believe there is room for us to still keep these really bold and courageous folks in office. But one thing I do want to lift up, the reaction to her tweet is a part of a broader campaign that's being enacted by folks that call themselves conservatives. They're members of the GOP. There's been footage that has emerged of, I hate the term dog whistle, but there is dog whistling going on in these ranks where they are talking badly about what they understand to be critical race theory and how that is the new bad word of the day. And so I can tell you that there is a campaign afoot to put folks like Congresswoman Cori Bush, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the Gang of Three, if you will, the outliers that have come up and have been willing to speak truth to power. So there is an active campaign to unseat them, but it's upon us, those folks that believe and understand that what they're speaking is truth, to be bold enough to support them and to bring others into the fold to support them when they face re-election.
Sister Sadiyah, what can Black people do who are not the Congresswoman's constituents? Can they do to support her strong stance?
You know, they can use their platform just like the Congresswomen are using their platform to promote truth, even though it's the truth that goes against the American democracy, because the reality is it was built and founded on the backs of Black people. And so just continue to speak truth to power, continue to talk about the race issues. They want to make it seem like the critical race theory is something that we should put to bed. But no, we need to have a real discussion about race in America and not let others, the conservatives of the GOP party, make it seem like that was a thing of the past. No, because we're still being affected by it. So I would encourage those to continue to use their platform to speak truth to power.
Right. Sister Rachel, your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. To understand, again, that there is strength in our numbers, as I mentioned, that, you know, it's frustrating. I can understand a lot of folks get disenfranchised with the election system. Right in Texas, where Sister Sadiyah is right now, you have an active campaign afoot. They called a special session to try to counteract some very savvy moves by the Democratic, the elected officials from the Democratic Party to put a stop to disenfranchisement of the vote. My understanding now is that they are going to do something that was done, I think, a few years ago, where the Democrats are going to go leave the state so that they can they're going to take away the power from the GOP to try to go back and implement these laws to disenfranchise their vote. But I encourage folks to still stand strong, to still, you know, we've got to just as the GOP may be planning and scheming to disenfranchise us, to put out all these false narratives, we also have to be thinking proactively and strategically as to what our plan is going to be for the next election cycles that come up, and understanding that there is going to be an effort to challenge Sister Cori Bush, understanding where Sister Cori Bush is from. She's not just from Missouri, but she is from the area that is Ferguson. She is a product of that environment. And so understanding that we have to think several steps ahead, think strategically, stop being so nice, to be very honest, and stop expecting those who definitely want to take away our rights. Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt and start thinking proactively as to how you can counteract their strategies.
Now, Sister Rachel, speaking of strategy, one of the things that we have noticed and have seen in just as long as I can remember is there is a certain population who feels like nothing can be done through voting, whether it be through local elections or through the presidential election. So what would you say to those who feel like there's no hope in voting for Black or any other officials?
I would actually not necessarily speak to them. I would speak to the people that keep offering themselves up for office and then not delivering on what the community wants, to be very honest. It is a very well-founded sentiment amongst, as I mentioned, you know, typically in a presidential election, you are at about 60% of the electorate that votes. Off-cycle elections, as you would call them, it's about 35%. And so folks are winning by attrition. You didn't really win. If you win 50% of 35, that's not a majority. And so my message or my conversation would not be with those folks who feel disenfranchised. It would be for those who actually are considering running for office, those who take that vote for granted, and maybe the conversation I would have with those who are disenfranchised and don't like what they're seeing in a candidate, run for something. Go. If you don't like what you're seeing in candidates, go be a candidate yourself. Align yourself, and there's a lot of different programs that are training folks as to what it takes to actually win an election. Go run. If you don't like what you see, be the change that you want.
Sister Sadiyah, I would ask you the same question. What do you think we should do, or Black people should do? Should we run for office? Should we speak to those who don't feel that there is any hope in voting? What are your thoughts on that?
I think we should do both of those. We should not stop running for office. We should put a platform and a program together that does benefit us as Black people in America. Those who are disenfranchised, we got to speak to them. We got to speak hope to them. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has told us that we must do for self or suffer the consequences. And by giving all of our power away to the politicians, that we're suffering the consequences of that. And so we have to, again, police our own communities. We have to have education that reflects us. We have to have our own economic system that helps build us up and bring us up out of our bootstrap, pull us up. So we have to continue to do for self. And if those politicians are serious about representing the community, then they have to teach the community how to do for themselves, or we're just going to suffer the consequences.
Thank you, ladies. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. We'll return with more from our contributors on Nikole Hannah-Jones's declination of the University of North Carolina's tenure offer for a position at Howard University. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Classes begin September 1st. To enroll, visit AsiaticMinds.com.
This is Sister Sadiyah Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sadiyah House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at SadiyahHouse.com.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline reads, "Severe weather lashes America." As hurricanes struck the South and tornadoes hit the Midwest region, droughts strangle Western states as the forces of nature and the destructive force of weather punishes the United States. The divine judgment of God is intensifying in the country. This FCM volume number 39 edition middle page article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is entitled, "God Has Come for the Black Man and Woman." To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the NNVnews.com Final Call cover report.
Please make sure you leave your comments and questions in the comment section below. Follow us on Facebook, National Network View, and make sure to check us out on Twitter as well, National Network View. This is Sergio Gutierrez with National Network View, signing off.
Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Nikole Hannah-Jones has turned down a tenure offer from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and will instead accept a faculty position at Howard University, the historically Black institution in Washington, D.C.
What have you decided to do? We just heard the vote was 9-4, offering you the tenure. What have you decided?
Well, I've decided to decline the offer of tenure. I will not be teaching on the faculty of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. It's a very difficult decision, not a decision I wanted to make. And instead, I'm going to be the inaugural night chair in race and journalism at Howard University.
Sister Sadiyah, we'll start with you. Do you think she made the right decision to refuse the offer and decide to accept the position at Howard University?
She absolutely made the right decision. You know, if you look at the history of her trying to get that tenureship and how they handled her and all the politics behind it, you know, she was an outsider coming in. She was really an enemy coming in. And just like what we talked about in the first segment about that neighbor, it wasn't until the student body president, it was the students at the school, you know, forcing the administration, forcing the board to even give her a chance to do a vote, because at first they just wanted to give her a contract for that particular department as chair. And the prior chairs they had were white people who had tenure. So they wanted to give her a contract with hopes in getting her tenureship. And so after she went through that big fight, she realizes that they were not going to appreciate her genius and all the contributions. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner, right? Come on now, this woman is platinum. She's more than just gold. And so to go to an HBCU to give our students, or our people, her genius was something she should have done a long time ago, but she had to find out on her own and go through that difficult fight that she did. But I'm glad that she chose Howard University.
Right. Sister Rachel, your thoughts on that? Did she make the right decision?
Absolutely. I concur with everything that Sister Sadiyah said. I also want to go deeper, though, because if you look at the reasoning that the board chair Hussman gave, it was because he did not believe that her academia stood up to the muster test, if you will, that there was question around the research validity of 1619. Now, mind you, this woman has a Pulitzer. She has received a MacArthur Genius Grant, all the things, and actually was an alum of UNC's journalism department. And so let's go deeper and talk about that. If you look at the background of the man who was questioning her academic bona fides, if you will, he became a newspaper man by virtue of his birthright. He became an owner of newspapers and only reported, if I'm not mistaken, for less than a year. And so if you look at, there's actually an article, I meant to look up who the writer was. There was a writer who interviewed this gentleman Hussman and interviewed Nikole Hannah-Jones. And he, as a writer, as a in the trenches writer, talked about the difference between the two. And of the two, he had more respect for Nikole Hannah-Jones because she had been in the trenches clawing her way up from the newsroom to this point. And so that's the one point. But the other thing I do want to point out is that she brought the chair that she was supposed to be getting at UNC. She brought that endowed chairship to Howard. There's a conversation around money here because one of the things that HBCUs struggle with is investment of resources. So not only is Nikole Hannah-Jones bringing her intellect, but between her and Ta-Nehisi Coates, they are bringing a total of $20 million to Howard University by virtue of their decision to not only join faculty, but to become endowed chairs and also to launch the Center for Democracy and Journalism at Howard University. And that's a point that really needs to be made. It's not just us returning home to those institutions that we either graduated from or need our intellectual prowess, but it is the conversation of leveraging resources, understanding our value, and going out to these nonprofits and saying, hey, this is who I am, this is where I want to go. Are you going to come with me? And that's what happened. The Ford Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and two other entities all came together and invested $20 million in what Nikole Hannah-Jones and Ta-Nehisi Coates are actually investing in young Black folks. I wish I could go and study under them.
Now, Gayle King asked her if she would be more effective teaching at a white institution because Howard already understands us, meaning Black people. Do you think, Sister Rachel, that she would have a greater impact at a white university versus at an HBCU?
Absolutely not. She, in her response, talked about this phenomena of Black greatness, always feeling like the pie in the sky is to go to PWIs, as they're called, predominantly white institutions, and prove that you can live by their rules, and that is the yardstick for excellence. But as anybody that has gone to Howard will tell you, it is in fact considered the Mecca. It is an institution of greatness. And I believe that her talents are better appreciated by Black journalists, by future Black journalists. She is literally living in the footsteps and the legacy of Ida B. Wells and utilizing investigative journalism as a means by which to bring about an understanding and expose racial inequities. And I believe the best place for that to happen is an HBCU. I speak as the former president of the New Orleans Association of Black Journalists. And I tell you that HBCUs are going to start to become places where the best and the brightest are going to take their talents. It's not just athletics. If you look at what happened with Deion Sanders and with Eddie George and all manner of pro football players as well as coaches, there's this like renaissance, this return to the HBCU, because that's where you're appreciated, and that's where she needed to be.
Can you speak to how this relates to doing for self?
Oh, absolutely. This is what we needed to do. And, you know, as I said, now I wish she would have done this in the beginning, but timing is really everything as well. Because had she not had this public fight, we wouldn't have had these nonprofits who are willing to contribute to Howard University and to give our gifts, our talents, our genius, our intellect to that which is going to raise us up, instead of her fighting her way into this all-white institution to help the few that are there, maybe the few that want this particular education and see her genius and see her as one of the talented 10, go to the HBCU so that we can get back to our roots and do for ourselves. So, you know, I applaud her for making the right decision ultimately and bringing more prestige on Howard University. And now, you know, as Black people, we can create an environment that we can continue to harvest more geniuses in that particular field.
Mm-hmm. Sister Sadiyah, do you think her exit and the entire criticism of this situation leaves a black eye on the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill?
Absolutely. They needed to be exposed for who they are and what they are. And, you know, they pretend or feign friendship with Black people and diversity. But when it came down, none of them, the leadership, and that was her complaint, the leadership did not stand up to defend her. It was the student body, the Black student body and the student body president, who happened to be Black, who had a voice on that particular board of trustees, who stood up for her. And so she did the right thing, because had she accepted the tenureship, just think about the struggles she would have had to endure just to be able to speak and continue the 619 project that she has in critical race theory and talk about the reality of white supremacy in America. She would have come against so many different obstacles. It would have been ridiculous. Now she's where she can really speak freely, and the New York Times made a decision to keep her so that they allow her voice to be heard.
Right. And Sister Rachel, Sister Sadiyah raised a good point, which was that the student body and the student body president really came to bat for her, to fight for her in relationship to this entire situation. If she had accepted the position at UNC at Chapel Hill, what do you think that might have said to the Black students who went to bat?
That is a tough question because I thought about that when she made the decision. My initial response was, you go, girl, because I believe that behind the scenes, my understanding is that there had been conversations with Dr. Frederick for a while, that they had been trying to get her. My understanding is that numerous HBCUs have been trying to get her once all this came to light. And so I did give thought to the students that went to bat for her, but I'll tell you, I don't think they had a problem with her turning that down. I think honestly, if she had accepted tenure, I think they would have supported her even still. because 1,619 people signed a petition and published that petition to show their support of bringing her to the university. I will tell you that some of the fallout from what happened with the Board of Trustees, there was a notable research, a doctor who was coming, I think in the Department of Physics or one of the sciences, an African-American woman who turned down the position because of the Board of Trustees stance. My question is what's going to actually change after this? And what lesson did the University of North Carolina learn about how you handle Black folks, how you handle some of the brightest minds? Like I said, I cannot stress it enough. Nikole Hannah-Jones was an alum of University of North Carolina. She should not have had such a tough way to go. And you know, the chair of the Board of Trustees really played himself because he showed exactly where his concerns lie. My understanding is that he didn't even want Nikole Hannah-Jones to ever be employed by the University of North Carolina, let alone be tenured. He actually voiced his concerns and took it up the pole to tell folks that he had concerns around her being there. And this was after she had published 1619, the 1619 Project. And so he had been actively, he said he wasn't campaigning, but if you make a phone call and you're one of the largest donors to a school, you're very clearly campaigning to make sure that someone that you should esteem, one of your alums, someone who's come through the School of Journalism, you're actively fighting for her not to be there. No, I don't think Black students at University of North Carolina fault her at all, but I also don't think they would have faulted her for staying either way. I think we're all quite happy for what has come out of this rather awful situation.
Thank you, Sister Rachel, and thank you, Sister Sadiyah, for this wonderful conversation tonight. I look forward to hearing more from you all next time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View News. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. Good night.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.